Silk is the next card dropping in Marvel Snap. She is a 2/5. After any card is played here, this moves to another location. Now she's also going to be the most expensive card released this month. It's the only card joining Series 5 upon release. The other two are going straight to Series 4, which means they are 50% cheaper, which is fantastic, which means you can get both of those cards for the price of this one, which really raises the question, should we pass on this card, or is it so powerful and so expensive that we must purchase it? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to break it down. Let's get to the mechanics to see how this card works. All right, so Silk isn't that complicated, but there are a few things that I want to cover. First of all, your opponent can move this card. It's not just reliant on you playing cards. Your opponent can play a card which will activate Silk's movement and she will move elsewhere. That could be a win. That could be a loss. It's hard to say. It depends on the board state and what you're working with, okay? Also, the move occurs before on reveals. So a clear example of this is if you wanted to gobble up Silk with Venom, right? You want to just absorb all of that power and then do some other shenanigans later. Well, you can't quite make that work unless there's nowhere for Silk to move. She will move first and then Venom's on reveal will activate and he'll miss eating up Silk. Now, if the other locations are locked up, right? If you got like Professor X and then there's another location that's like Space Throne and it's filled, Silk has nowhere to go. She's not going anywhere. She's not going to move, okay? So you can actually pull that off. But if it's possible, Silk will move to a different location. Not the same location. You know, Wolverine, if he gets destroyed, he goes to a random location. Silk's always going to look to go elsewhere, okay? So she's not going to just flip and stay at the same spot. So it's not going to activate a Kraven if he's at the same location as Silk and she just, you know, flips and goes to the same one. No, she's going to look to go elsewhere. So some of the pros, I think the most attractive feature of this card is the 5 power for 2 cost. That is a fantastic stat line. Actually, it's probably one of the best stat lines in the 2-drop department. We could look at Lizard as a clear comparison to this card. He also has a downside ability where he loses 4 power if there's 4 cards opposing him at that location, whereas Silk just moves around. That doesn't seem too bad at first, but we're going to break it down in a second here. But the nice thing about moving around is that it can reach unplayable locations. So let's say there's Sanctum Sanctorum on the field and you have no means of getting a card there. All you got to do is play a card at Silk's location, she bounces over, and then hopefully your opponent can't play Jeff or anything else over there. And your happy days, you're going to win that location and maybe the game because of Silk. So that's a great application. Another one is Sera. So because Silk costs 2, she can get the discount from Sera going to 1. She's now a 1/5. And I think the best application of this card is to save it for a very big burst turn. The reason being is that you don't want your opponent to know that they can move this power around on your side of the board, have that layer of control, so to speak. So if you wait until turn 6 and then you play Silk, maybe she won't even end up moving. She's just going to be straight up 5 power for 2, and that's fantastic value. You can combo it with a lot of other cards like Hit Monkey, another one is like Bishop, anything like that, it will work out pretty well for you. To top it all off, there's not a whole lot of counters. There's not really much out there. I was trying to look through the whole list and I was thinking, okay, maybe like Kingpin, maybe Galactus, maybe some lockdown with like Professor X, but that feels like about it. We're going to get into that in a second as well. So the cons of this card. Why do I think this isn't actually worth the 6,000 token purchase? Okay, so there's very few synergies. A few that I already mentioned, like Sera, Angela, maybe because you can play it there and it opens up a spot as long as it doesn't jump back. Kraven getting the bus when it moves around, that's kind of okay, but really unreliable. The main reason for me is RNG. It is a random effect. By nature, this has randomness to the card. It's somewhat controllable. Like I was saying earlier, if you fill the locations, she's not going to move anywhere. It's not random anymore. But if you're playing this on curve, your opponent's going to have a little bit of control, right? They have a degree of control of moving this card, and it could lock you out in your locations. Let's say you're setting up a location, you got like 3 cards there and you really plan on playing like another key card at that location, but then Silk jumps over there. And now you're locked. Your opponent knows exactly how much power they need to beat you, and they might even be able to move Silk over to another unfavorable position on your board. So as much as I can see this card absolutely winning games, I can see it losing games. When you compare it, if we go back to Lizard, Lizard's not going to lose you games. He's just going to have less power than he started with, and maybe that's a bit of a detriment to your ability to win the game, but for the most part, you should probably have other means of power and win. But Silk, I feel like, could actually go somewhere really bad and then lose you the game. Just like I said, Sanctum Sanctorum is a great location. Bar with no name could absolutely ruin Silk. So it's like there's pros and cons with this, and I just don't see that it's just because of its stat line. It makes it clear and okay. Maybe you want to play like 0 with this, but then if you're doing that, why aren't you running Titania or Ebony Ma? You know what I'm saying? Like I'd probably rather rock those because they're cheaper with my 0 play than fit in Silk into a deck. Just not feeling it. Before we move on really quick, I just want to emphasize that I'm only saying this because it costs 6,000 tokens. I don't by nature think this is a really bad card. I don't. I really don't. I think it's an okay card, but I just can't see myself spending 6,000 tokens on it when there's some, more fun cards down the line. Okay. So let's get to the counters. So I'm not going to touch on this too much, but there's really only a few that I could think of. And that's Kingpin. If it moves on the turn 6, she's going to destroy herself. Essentially. That's not great. Professor X could either lock in Silk so that she can't move, which might not be good if your opponent is aiming to do that. It might be good for you. But again, if you play the card, she's going to move first. So you can't actually make it work with Professor X. She'll move before he even gets his ongoing ability out. And then Galactus, I mean, like anything movement just kind of gets wrecked by Galactus in most scenarios. And actually, if Galactus is played at the Silk location, she's going to move elsewhere and guarantee get destroyed. So that's pretty rough too. So yeah, I feel like these 3 are going to give Silk maybe a hard time, but otherwise, like it's pretty clear skies for Silk. I don't think there's going to be too much that is going to give this card a hard time. All right, so some key synergies. So of course, Kraven is a very good card. It's going to get that +2 power every time Silk bounces back over to his location. And hopefully you can, trigger that 2 or 3 times just from Silk alone if you're bouncing it all around. And if you're moving anyways, then Miles Morales is always a good combo because then he's discounted to 1. And then you got Angela, Sera, Hitmonkey. And I think all of these in tandem kind of work together in that Sera miracle list I have on the left there. And this, I think, like maybe not this exact list, but like a variant, so to speak, of this list, I think will be very strong. And essentially what you're doing is you're playing Sera on turn 5, and then you're trying to play as many cards as possible on turn 6 so that your Hitmonkey is absolutely insane. You probably have a already really high power Kitty Pryde stacking with your Angela. You can even destroy Nova with your Killmonger, and then you don't run the risk of destroying any of your other precious 1-drops because you can play Kitty Pryde after the Killmonger play, right? Because you'll have her on turn 6. And there's just a lot of synergy going on here for a lot of burst power. It is kind of weak to lockdown. If they lock down the locations early or there's a few unfavorable locations, it makes it difficult to play so many cards in a turn. But these are such fun lists to play. I love it. It is a little bit reliant on the Sera on turn 5, but you can make it work without because you have a bunch of 2-drops. You play like 3 of them. Happy days. Mojo even in there because you're going to have so much stuff out there with your Mysterio and whatnot. It's going to be great. Yeah, again, I think this is going to be Silk's best opportunity to shine. The middle deck is not a serious one. I just put it in here because I think it's fun to do thematic decks. And when we keep getting all these spider characters, man, we're going to have a Spiderverse list of full Spidey characters soon. But this is what I got so far. We got Ghost Spider, Silk, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Spider-Woman. And soon when Spider-Ham and Spider-Man 29 jump in, we're going to keep updating this list and keep it going. But I got the rest of the villains there. And there's so many other Spider-Man villains I could put in, but I just kind of filling it out. Then we got Silky moves. This is just a move deck throwing in Silk. I honestly don't think she shines in this list. I think there's other options that I would rather put in over Silk, like even like Storm or something like that. Just because I don't think moving her around to get Kraven buffs is all that worth, or even just the discount from Miles Morales. Like I don't know. It doesn't seem like a necessary component to the deck to make it work to get those wins. I think I'd rather focus my efforts elsewhere in the move department. So there you go. I think these are kind of the lists that maybe you could see. Well, at least the 2 on the ends there, not the Spider-Verse one, but that's pretty fun. But yeah, again, Sera Miracle, I feel like that's where Silk is going to shine. And that's why I feel like 6,000 tokens for like one list that I think this card is really going to work well in. I don't know, dude. It's just not for me. I'm more excited about the other two that are going to come out later, and they're cheaper. So I gotta say pass. But that is for you guys to decide. You got to look at all the information that is available and decide whether you want to take on this card. 6,000 tokens. Let's hear it. What's it for you? Pass or buy? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know if there's some combos that I missed. I would love to hear them because eventually I do want to get this card. I do want to play with it. It does look fun. It has sick variants, by the way. My gosh, I love some of these variants. I think this Venomized one is one of the best, and the one I used for the thumbnail is fire. Fire. All right, that is it for me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're excited for the new patch, and I'll catch you guys next time.